Hello and welcome to Plain Sailing. In the coming programmes we're going to be introducing you to skippers and their boats.
What motivates skippers to sail? Why do they choose the boats they do? What waters do they find themselves drawn to? We hope to answer these questions and more.
In this episode of Plain Sailing, I go on a trip with Richard and his boat Stormdancer to build up my sailing miles.
Welcome to Plain Sailing, and in this journey we join Richard, the skipper, Michael and Sue, Helmut and Brian, and of course, Stormdancer, an Oyster 435. The journey starts at the island's capital, Kirkwall, sailing north to Rousey to anchor, then crossing open water on the way to Loch Erible, on the north coast of Scotland. After a sheltered night there, setting sail to tackle Cape Wrath, the most northwesterly point in Britain, eventually anchoring at Badcombe. Stormdancer clocks up the miles and sails all the way to Portree on the Isle of Skye. The next day a journey past a classic castle and under the Skye Bridge eventually finishes by dropping anchor at Orkney. Heading out between Skye and the mainland, an epic sail takes Stormdancer to the shelter of Loch Sunart, before finally coming to the end of the journey in Tobermory. Yes, this is the village that features in the children's TV programme.
I've sailed in lots of places around the world, the Caribbean, the Med, Brittany, etc. I haven't sailed in all the places around the world, but I think with confidence I can say that this is the best sailing area in the world.
In about 30 years actually, since I first experienced sailing, and somebody took me out in a boat near Salcombe. There was a houseboat which trained people in dinghy sailing, and I was so intrigued with it that I thought we ought to do more. And one way or another we started doing a little bit of dinghy sailing.
We had a dentist who had a share in a boat on the Welsh Harp. And when Michael's mouth was all full of gadgets, he said, he was South African, "Would you like a share in the boat?" So Michael went, oh good, he said. And that was that, wasn't it?
That was that,
yeah.
Day 1. The Orkneys themselves are a destination in their own right, with over 70 islands to visit. The crew assemble at Kirkwall, which is the capital of the Orkneys. Records indicate it has been inhabited for 8,500 years by Mesolithic and Neolithic tribes, and then the Picts. The Vikings invaded in 1046. They obviously had the idea of invading Britain 20 years before the Normans. St Magnus Cathedral is a major highlight in the centre of town. Construction was started in 1137, but added to over a period of 300 years. The saint was known for his piety and kindness apparently. Highland Park and Scapa distilleries are within walking distance and are the most northerly whisky distilleries in Britain. The marina is close by and has all the necessary facilities. Not to mention a bit of local colour. Once fully stocked with food and of course whisky, we headed north and along the coast of Shappensea. Standing stones provide evidence of the island's human occupation since Neolithic times. According to Tacitus, the Roman general Agricola subdued the inhabitants of the Orkney Islands, and local legend holds that he landed on Shappensea. Roman coins have been found on Shappensea, but traders may have brought them to the island. It is interesting to speculate what the Roman soldiers thought about being away from the warmth of Italy and fighting in Britain, let alone as far north as the Orkneys. In more recent times during the Second World War, gun emplacements were built on the island to protect the wide firth from German torpedo boats.
I'd spent years in what you might call big business, flying around, pressure job, that sort of thing, and decided that there was a better way to live. And what better than to indulge a passion for sailing? I've sailed for years, like many people, and this is a chance to enjoy myself, put something back into sailing, and meet some great people, to be honest.
After an invigorating sail, getting to know the ropes on Stormdancer, we pull in at the anchorage between Egglesey and Rousey. All the fresh air has made the guests very hungry. Richard always makes a gourmet meal. What better way to prevent mutiny? Sailing in Scotland, you have beautiful unspoilt scenery everywhere, but you don't come across marinas very often, so you have to be self-sufficient. Scottish charm, remote anchorages with peace and tranquility. Day 2. With good memories of the first evening in Rousey, the team leave the Orkneys behind and hit the open sea en route for landfall at Loch Eriboll. The sea journey is approximately 140 kilometres, or 86 miles, and so takes about 12 to 14 hours. On this occasion, motoring, as there is not enough wind to make the passage in reasonable time. There was a quick sighting of dolphins, but unfortunately they were away before the camera was ready. Approaching landfall and the shelter of the loch, Stormdancer sails into the opening past Whiten Head, and then the skipper uses the Whitehead lighthouse to navigate the last section. The destination is the anchorage next to the limestone kilns at Ardniki, a small-scale lime production industry developed here in the 19th century. Lime was produced by heating the local limestone in these kilns and is used to reduce the acidity of soil and for cement production. The pier that you can see was the terminus for the Highlam ferry, which sailed across to the Highlam Inn. Sadly, they are no more.
Actually, I'm not a sailor. I have been to sailing cruises twice in the Mediterranean and in Italy and Greece. So I'm not an experienced sailor. I'm just here to see how it is to sail in Scotland.
But I think if you ask what attracts us to Scottish sailing, it is the feeling that there are so few people compared to other favourite sailing places like Greece and the Mediterranean generally.
Well, and the Solent, the Solent.
Or, of course, the Solent, the south of England, which is great, but is not to be compared with this. And we've come back. We've tried other places, but we always come back here.
The sea loch at 16 kilometres, or 9.9 miles long, has been used by all types of shipping for centuries as a deep water anchorage, as it is safe from the often stormy seas of Cape Wrath and the Pentland Firth. It is a pleasure to enjoy another fabulous meal in such beautiful surroundings. Day 3, and it is time to leave the protection of Loch Eriboll and brave the wrath of the Cape. Luckily, the weather is good, and a calm sea state means there is little to no excitement, so the crew can check out the interesting coastline as they pass the Kyles of Durness that cut into the landmass to make the Cape a very remote wilderness. It's owned by the Ministry of Defence and used as a military training area. Very quickly the team arrives at the Cape, the lighthouse and foghorn protecting generations of sailors from the rocks that threaten to do Stormdancer some real damage. The coastline around here has frequent sea stacks. Here we can see Ambuchaila, which formed from the Torridonian sandstone and was first climbed in 1968. Sailing through the Sound of Handa, ashore you can see the small hamlet of Tarbert. Another sea stack appears, the Old Man of Stoer, and guess what? This one was climbed in 1966 by the same guys a couple of years before. It looks like they were working their way up the coast. Then soon the Stoer lighthouse is spotted, and so time to navigate into Badcall for another night's shelter. The bay is located in a remote area of outstanding natural beauty. This stunning region is studded with small islands and is home to the Edrakilles Hotel and the Salmon House, headquarters of Loch Duart Limited, an independent salmon farm. The Badcall area offers a wide range of opportunities for fishing, kayaking, climbing and hill walking.
One of the things that I've enjoyed about sailing up here is the fact that it is quiet and picturesque. You know, when you do pull into a small remote anchorage, often there may be only one other craft there.
Sometimes it's very good to do a trip on your own and that I can enjoy very much the nature and forget a little bit about the things, about the daily work on this. Therefore, I didn't bring my watch with me.
There is this sense of liberation, not knowing where you're going to end the day, and the feeling of something which frees you from the routine of normal life and the pressures of normal life. And there are other pressures instead, but they're very gentle pressures and enjoyable ones.
It is time again for fresh food and to enjoy an excellent glass of wine. Day 4, and it is time to leave Badcall and set sail for Portree, a journey of approximately 120 kilometres, or 75 miles. The first job in hand is navigating through the small isles named the Summer Isles, an archipelago lying at the entrance to Loch Broom. These islands are largely uninhabited. Now Stormdancer is reaching more populated waters, other vessels pass us to break up the day. Here is a ferry from the company Caledonian McBrain. Anyone who has spent time in the Scottish Highlands will recognise the name. The wind died off, and so the engine had to be started from this point. Then the cry was heard that is always a joy to hear: dolphins! A large pod was all around Stormdancer, with other pods in the distance. The amazing creatures were alongside for a short time, but they always leave you with a lasting feel-good factor and a desire to swim effortlessly with them to share their experience of the sea. After they had gone, we came across a fishing vessel. It must be a tough life fishing out here in all weathers. Well, this crew don't have a tough life. Pasta, fresh salad and wine al fresco. A puffin drops in to check us out, probably heard about lunch. After a while, the lighthouse at Rona is located. Stormdancer is about to enter the Sound of Rasay, with fantastic views on both sides of the channel. There are very impressive hills and cliffs all over Skye. More fishermen are going about their work, ensuring that the fish and chip shops and restaurants in the metropolis of Portree are well stocked. The mountain that marks the start of Loch Portree appears, and so the day's journey was nearly at an end, and there is excitement of pubs and shops and activity. With Stormdancer being on a mooring, there is also the challenge of going ashore in the dinghy. All that shopping and pub visiting is exhausting. The guests treat Richard to a meal out in the town. The skipper needs a well-deserved break from being a galley slave. After a great evening out, the crew returned to Stormdancer, happy to experience the contrast of going ashore.
It's nice to see Portree from another point of view, because last time we went to Portree it was very grim and grey and Sundyish, when it was nice to find it quite jolly, yes, and full of life and that.
The trip's been fantastic. I mean, we've seen some amazing scenery, we've seen some fantastic wildlife. I mean, for the boat to be surrounded by dolphins was amazing.
We have seen fantastic landscapes.
What will tomorrow bring? Day 5, and leaving Loch Portree, the stunning cliffs that welcomed the boat pass us to starboard. Then it was down the channel and out between Raasay and Scalpay before heading to the bridge that carries traffic from the mainland on to Skye. Apart from being a mecca for climbers and hill walkers, Skye is also famous for hiding Bonnie Prince Charlie. At one point in Portree itself, legend has it that Flora MacDonald was the woman who rode the prince being hunted by the English over the sea to Skye from Benbecula. The building of a bridge seems somehow to reduce the romanticism of the island, but certainly not the spectacular views. Today there is much more wind, and the crew gets suitably kitted out with waterproofs and warm clothing, the boat reaching 8 to 9 knots at times. Then all of a sudden the impressive Skye Bridge is visible in the distance. The height of the bridge is 29 metres at mean. High water springs at about 17 metres. There is 12 metres clearance. So plenty of room to get Stormdancer under, but when going underneath it seems like the rig is quite close to hitting the bridge. Passing under the bridge, you observe the village of Kylakin to starboard with the ruins of Castle Mull. Contrasting the ancient to the modern, to port there is a 37-metre super yacht, Nashira 2. Time for a bit of yacht envy. And in the distance, the stunning mountains of the mainland are viewed as we head for the beautiful iconic Ellendonnan Castle. What a stunning location for lunch. Gorgeous meal with the wildlife looking on enviously, Richard organised a rainbow. Is there no end to his talents as a host? We moved on to Kylrea and down to Ornsey. Here you can see the lighthouse built in 1957 by David and Thomas Stevenson, David being the uncle of Robert Louis Stevenson. With a tasty whisky like Tobermory, you can make some fantastic recipes. I'm sure Richard knows many. Day 6, and it is tough to leave the beautiful island of Skye behind. Coming up on starboard are the small isles, then the boat turns to port and into Loch Sunart and finds the anchorage for the evening. Exiting the bay, Stormdancer motors past the lighthouse. On the way down the channel, another Caledonian McBrain ferry is spotted. Exiting the channel between Skye and the mainland, the team enter the territory of the small isles. With a characteristic profile of these hills, this can only be egg. Rum, mum and canna are also part of the Small Isles group. Heading towards the final anchorage before the journey's end, the lighthouse of Arden and Curran is passed, heading into Loch Sunart. After sailing up and down the loch for a while, a sheltered spot named Loch na Dromaboya is found. So, the final evening meal on board, an emotional finish after many miles, Stormdancer keeping the guests safe from all the elements.
Cheers. It's been a great week.
Yes.
Day 7, and it's just a short hop across the Tobermory and the final destination.
one of the things that I want to do as well is to put quality into the sailing experience. When I was learning to sail, and I've heard this from so many people, they were expected to suffer for their pleasure, and after all, this is a leisure sport. We work on quality boats. People don't have to suffer to enjoy themselves and to learn to sail, and the experience is all the better for it.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Plain Sailing. If you would like a video made about you and your boat, get in touch. We may like the cut of your jib. We are also available for commissions. Come back soon to check out the next episode of Plain Sailing.